Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hope you can all hear me and see me. Welcome back to the Infrachain Summit from Bologna, Luxembourg, and online. After the sessions of this morning on IP and supply chain use cases, we have another extremely interesting set of presentations in plan for the afternoon. We will focus on two areas of the economy which are fundamental in the current world, so circular economy and creative industries. Circular economy and sustainability will be the area where use cases will be presented from Frédéric Hubin, Antoine Le Feuvre, Lorenzo Zullo, and Willem Mirer, use cases that will deal with innovative manufacturing, with digital product passports, with sustainable products. So all subjects that are particularly on the agenda in today's world and in the current news even. Second session will be on creative industries with Irina Albita, Matteo Fedeli, and Max Stöckers. They will present use cases on copyright in the arts, on gaming, on financial services for the creative industries. This again, with all the hype and all the interest for media and for innovative platforms, is clearly another point where blockchain technology will have an impact and will be important in the coming years. Both sessions will be closed with a panel, one coordinated from Fabio Fabbi and the other one from Matteo Cernuschi. And both sessions will have also keynote speakers with Massimiliano Mazzanti for circular economy, professor of University of Ferrara, and Sten Salver from Accelerate Estonia on the part in relation to creative industries. So I will now leave the floor to the introduction from the CEO of Net Service, who is welcoming the participants from Bologna. I will leave in the floor and then we will start with the afternoon sessions. Thanks.
So good afternoon. I'm Gianluca Ortolani and I am the CEO of Net Service. Thank you all to be present here and welcome to the second part of this inspiring event on innovation and the blockchain use cases. Net Service is very proud to be an active member of Infrachain since 2018 and to host for the second time the International Summit. We have been investing in blockchain, DLTs, and very practical application for several years now, and we have found in Infrachain a strong organization and a network of reliable partners for our international projects in this sector. Among the latest achievement of R&D activities, Net Service has launched 2 years ago the Eterna platform based on blockchain infrastructure consortium with proof of authority consensus and based on official products by the Ethereum Foundation. Technically, Eterna is a blockchain as a service. It's the platform that allows simple and transparent use of blockchain technology for any application and process integration. It guarantees faster transactions, reduced costs, and greater compliance with GDPR directives. In addition, Eterna offers products designed to certify documents, perform secure online voting, certify a chain or a production process, and sign documents. Again, we are very proud to say that the first international node of Eterna is hosted and managed by Infrachain. Now we have to thank Tom and the colleagues in Luxembourg and Federico, with the colleagues here in Bologna, for the hard work and the grit result in making this day possible, even in the current conditions and with all logistic limitations. So I'm sure that we will share the next Infrachain Summit in person the next time, as they are becoming a tradition. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks. I would like to call Massimiliano Mazzanti on stage to give him the floor. He's a full professor of economic policy at the University of Ferrara. The presentation that he will give is on innovations for circularity in manufacturing with the sector-based empirical evidence from the surveys and the case studies. The main area refers to European, the main area of his research refers to European impacts of the blockchain economy. I asked him if he wants to join here.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm briefly presenting some insights about the circular economy, innovation and policies. Just to mention that, yes, I'm proudly directing this SUEZ Universities Center, which is linking various universities in Italy. Now we are actually 8, including the alma mater, University of Bologna. This is one of our last report from the European Agency on Sustainability. You can download if you like to see an overall sketch of the various transitions. Just to mention that we need to integrate the sustainability transition with other transitions like the demographic transition, technological change, the fiscal transitions as well. So everything should be interconnected. This is another report you may download from the theme website, which highlights the interconnection between the circular economy, decarbonization, and bioeconomy as well. So the integrated approach. Innovation and policies are two key pillars. If we want to stick to innovation, we can cite the famous Michael Porter framework. Michael Porter in 1991 highlighted the fact that environmental policies can increase competitiveness and economic performances through innovation. What about innovation in Europe and in Italy? We have some innovation leaders. The usual suspects like Scandinavia, Germany also, but you see, for example, France, Italy are just lagging behind a bit, but higher than the average. So we have a core set of countries leading Europe, and then we also have to tackle convergence, but Europe is moving towards sustainability transitions to a great extent through innovation. Thank you. One key point to highlight is the role of R&D. Here, more problematic things for Italy, for sure, also for the UK, besides Germany, Denmark, Sweden. Europe is not really performing very well, so we have to exploit the Green Deal wave of investments to increase R&D expenditures. For example, look at South Korea. So South Korea is not a miracle, it's just investments in R&D. Then I would like to show you some original data from a survey we just carried out on circular economy on the Italian manufacturing enterprises. Just a few data, we can go. Here, this is a picture of the transition to SMEs. So this is SMEs, the Italian manufacturing. You see that we are in a transition with some areas like greenhouse gas emissions, which are expectedly less covered, But for example, we have strengths on reduction of waste emitted, for example. So SMEs are stronger on the circular economy with some problems on CO2 abatement, eco-design in between. But just to say that SMEs are more problematic, but are in a good transition towards sustainability. Next slide. We re-interviewed firms during the pandemic crisis. We observed some slight decreases, but overall, the crisis seems affected innovation in a way which is not really severe. So this is probably good news for the post-pandemic crisis. Finally, maybe this is the last point of the message. So we talked about innovation, innovations, innovation in SMEs. What we have in the questionnaire, and the data are publicly available for curiosities and for projects and connections. We asked firms whether they eco-innovated while exploiting Industry 4.0 programs. And here you have heterogeneous aspects with a niche of firms which are investing both in the digital transition and in the green transition. So linking the two aspects of innovation. So again, this is a picture about the role of SMEs in an important industrial country such as Italy. Okay. Very lastly, we also focused on Emilia-Romagna with a narrower type of picture. And here I finished my talk by, so we surveyed micro enterprises and SMEs as well in Emilia-Romagna. So this is representative of the the Emilia-Romagna manufacturing system. You see it, and I finish with that. I mean, it is in Italian, but I explained the 20% is conveying waste and residuals to other firms. So the key point of the circular economy, one of the most important points, is connecting firms and connecting agents. And this is an empirical aspect which shows that the creation of circular networks and connections is one of the important aspects of the digital and green transition. I've finished my talk with this message, and thanks again and you have all the references to contact us if you want.
Thank you, Massimiliano. I hand it back to Tom for the next presentation in Luxembourg.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Cristiano, and thank you, Professor Mazzanti, for this very interesting keynote speech and this very interesting introduction into our next track. So, blockchain and the circular economy. We have explored it already in previous conferences, and we know that actually blockchain has the potential to shape sustainable environment, of course, not by technology itself, but by fostering collaboration and also increasing trust and trustworthiness. We have heard a lot about that. That's at the heart of blockchains and transparency. So it's really also about ecosystems. And in the first use case now of this track, we will discover CircularChain. It's a digital solution which is developed by SUEZ for the recovery of natural resources through the blockchain. It will be presented by the CEO, Digital Solutions for Citizens, Consumers and Company of SUEZ Smart and Environmental Solutions, Mr. Antoine Le Feuvre. And he will elaborate on the opportunities and challenges that can be faced when adopting such a technology. So, Antoine, thank you very much for joining us here today, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be with you today in Luxembourg, in Bologna, and remotely. It's a real pleasure. I will try in the next 10 minutes to share with you how SUEZ is using the blockchain to accelerate the circular economy. I hope that this testimony will get a bit of inspiration to use the blockchain to develop a more sustainable world. So, few words about SUEZ. You might know us. It's a very old lady because we are 160 years. There is about 90,000 employees passionate by the environment. And basically, we have three main areas. We do water management, waste management, and also everything related to air. Our purpose is really to help our customers to reduce their environmental footprint and to face the current environmental crisis. And today, as you know, we are quite very historical moment, or we have to face together a triple crisis. The first one is obviously the climate crisis, and we know that the 1.5 trajectory will be quite unreachable, and we are already living the consequences of the warming, of the global warming. Another crisis that we are also facing together, that we sometimes call a twin crisis of the first one, is the biodiversity. In less than 50 years, more than 2/3 of the animals on the planet disappear, and 1/3 of species are about to disappear in the next decades. So that's not a question of the species, that's also the capability for us to live on the planet. And we need to live with the planet and not against the planet. And the third crisis, that is mainly more the topic of today's conference, is the depletion of natural resources. Again, in the last 50 years, the extraction of natural resources has tripled. And this number is expected to double again by 2060. To say it in another word, we use today more than 1.6 planet per year. So we see that we live on credit, and it's not something that can last for long. Fortunately, as that has been introduced this morning by the introduction of Mr. Ministry of the Economy, circular economy, that is a concept that has now more than 10 years, provides some answers with a three pillars. The first one is that we need to start doing eco-design to make sure that the products are conceived with a life cycle mindset. We need also to reuse, and we are happy to see that the share economy is now deploying faster and faster. And the third pillar is also the circular recoveries. We need to make sure that when a product is no more usable for its initial usage, it can be recovered, transformed, and we can reproduce some new material, what we call secondary raw material, to reintroduce in the economy. So we need really to accelerate shifting from a tech make dispose model for something much more circular. So that's a good news, but we are not going fast enough. The world is less than 10% circular. What does it mean? Is that every year, to meet the expectation of the growing population, we need about 100 billion tons of resources. About those 100 billion of resources, less than 10% come from the circular economy. So every year, we extract from the planet 90 billion tons of resources. So we see that we do not have the right space. So, and as this is at the heart of SUEZ vision and purpose, we were investigating solutions that can help, and we saw that the issue that we recognize related to circular economy is first the price of secondary raw material. Frequently, they are higher than natural materials. Well, nowadays, since the beginning of the year, with the increased pricing of raw material, that is shifting, but that is still fragile. The second issue regarding the deployment of the circular economy is the quality and the traceability, because industrial, for good purpose, need to be reassured on the quality of everything coming from the circular economy. And for the citizens, there is also a question of trust. They want to make sure that when they buy product from a sustainable product or product coming from the circular economy, they want to be reassured about this. There is a multiplication of the labels. Everybody is saying that it's green, it's greener, and so on. So our customer might be lost. So we need to help them to have a better trust on what is really circular and very helpful for the planet. So, and the last point is that on these circular economy questions, we have new type of waste, because we sort more and more, and we need to create new supply chain on the circular economy, bringing in more cooperation with new actors. So when you add more trust and more cooperation, you come to the conclusion that blockchain, as you know, might be the good answer. So even if we do not believe that technology will be the answer or the only answer to sustainable solution, we believe that blockchain can bring a solution and can support circular economy by providing more trust and more cooperation between actors. So when we have said this 2 or 3 years ago, the next question was how can prove the concept, move forward, experiment, and go further. It's always quite easy to put it on slide. It's a bit more difficult to test it and go further. So our next step was, okay, I need to experiment the blockchain on a use case and make sure that I am on the right direction. So we have selected for this a use case that is at the crossroad of our historical businesses, meaning waste and water. This morning we were talking about the demands of paper toilets during the pandemics. Here, we'll ask the question and we'll answer the question what your paper toilet becomes, and yes, and what your paper toilet becomes. So what we've made is that we made a full blockchain that cover the entire supply chain from wastewater. So I don't know if you wonder what's become your wastewater, but basically they are collected by sewage. They are treated by a wastewater plant, and there is 2 outcomes. The first one is clean water, which goes sent back to the environment, and the second one is a sludge. And sludge is contained. It's a powerful fertilizer that contains nitrogen, that contains phosphorus, that contains nutriment that is sent back to field, and we track all those. All this value chain. The way it's tracked, because I need to go fast, is very similar to what has been introduced this morning and this afternoon in other example, the way to capture all the data on field through a transporter directly from the plant, directly from the laboratories, and sending back the information from our user, which are the farmers that, thanks to the blockchain we have implemented, are now able to have a very close review of all the nutriment that has been sent back to the soils. And we have implemented a blockchain to link all the information, and all actors can contribute to element the blockchain through the transaction they produce. So where we are today, we have deployed the solution with a very large city in France, Nantes, which has more than 800,000 inhabitants. We have implemented it with 130 farmers, 7 plants. And this year, that was more than 1 year ago. And this year we are deploying the solution to 10 other municipalities and municipalities in France. This is how we use it in this specific use case, but at the same time, as we were very convinced that was the right path in the circular economy, we extended the platform to make it the platform of the circular economy, and we will be deploying next year much more use casing, still in the circular economy, and still in the capability to provide confidence in the capability to transform waste into new materials in order to reduce the usage of natural resources. Thank you for your listening. It was a pleasure to be there today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antoine, for your insights in this. And with that, we continue our circular economy track, and we will continue in Bologna. Cristiano.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for these presentations, to Antoine as well, and Frederick. Now we switch to the next presentation from Lorenzo Zullo, blockchain-based digital product passport. So the Sustainable Product Initiative, SPI, is aiming to make a product fit for a climate neutral, circular and sustainable economy. So this is the objective of the SPI initiative. And we will see with the ChemChain a solution which enable chemical companies and downstream users to generate and exchange digital product passport while preserving the trade secrets and the know-how of the company. Lorenzo is the co-founder and managing director of ChemChain. He's a master in environmental engineering and chemical engineering, and spent several years working with the Industries Association in chemistry, so Eurometaux and ETRMA, dealing with chemical regulations. Then he switched into its entrepreneurial experience. È diventato imprenditore. And he founded chemical.com, and then now ChemChain, sorry. Chemical.com is a regulatory software as a service, so it was already innovative, and now we are going to listen from him about this new use case. Thanks.
Thank you for the introduction. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Zullo. Thank you for the introduction. I'm the CEO and Managing Director of ChemChain. ChemChain is a recently established startup. We incorporated it in Luxembourg last year. Previous to that, we have received some funds from the European Commission in the framework of the SMEs instrument. And with those funds, we managed to have a feasibility study that allowed us to get in contact with major chemical companies and test the idea before starting implementing it. Last year, we incorporated it in Luxembourg, and we were also selected into the Fit for Start program, which now we are in the process of completing. So I think we had a great opportunity to have support in expanding our ideas. The overall idea of ChemChain is to solve the problem of exchanging information along the supply chain. That's a really critical point for circularity, because products are produced with materials and substances that are more and more complex. And one of the problems is that when the product reaches the end of life, you don't have such information. So being able to identify where these materials are, and most importantly, to understand which chemicals are present in those materials, it's an information that is missing, and that is somehow compromising the possibility to recycle those products. That's also something that has been perceived by regulators, and in particular, the European Commission last year published a Sustainable Product Initiative, which includes the intention to establish new requirement for all producers of materials and articles to develop digital product passport. So these digital product passports are somehow digital assets that are univocally linked to each product, and will allow companies to embed into the product information about, for example, the sourcing of the materials, information about the safety, information about how to recycle them, and in order to support the circular economy. So that's what a normal economic linear model look like. You have a production of chemicals at the beginning of the supply chain. Out of that, you have some production of components or material. In this picture, you have a textile, and then out of that, you have the production of a finished product. In this case, you have a T-shirt. Then this T-shirt enter into the hand of the consumer, and finally, this product end up into waste. And that's really a missed opportunity, and this is something that should remain a kind of historical image of what the economic model should look like. This is what I just mentioned about the Sustainable Product Initiative of the European Commission, and one of the pillars is indeed the creation of a digital product passport for each product and material that will be available on the market. This is a requirement that is expected to come in the next years, and we are indeed getting ready and working in that direction. Next slide. So the overall idea is to be able to somehow close the loop, not only in terms of how the material are recycled, but also in the flow of information. And in order to enable such a circularity, there are two key aspects that are essential. First, the transparency. So you need to know which chemicals are present in which material in order to enable the recycling, but also data accessibility. That means that information that are at the moment, for example, available in the beginning of the supply chain should become available also to the next actors, and also most important at the end of the life of an article. Next slide, please. However, there are two main barriers that prevent information to flow along the supply chain. The first one is that a lot of this information that are needed to enable recycling of material are considered as companies' know-how. So if you think about the chemical composition of material, that's like a kind of secret receipt that companies do not want to share with their competitors. And then there is another element that is very important that is preventing the circularity to work, is the duration of an article, the life of an article. So you may need to have access to the information about the chemical composition, for example, at the end of the life of an article. And if you think about construction products, furniture, or other type of articles that could last many, many years, it becomes very difficult to retrieve that type of information after a certain amount of years. Next slide, please. So that's why we have developed ChemChain. So ChemChain is a blockchain based platform that enable companies to exchange and transfer information along the supply chain in a controlled and secure way. Why we choose blockchain? Blockchain, we believe it's an emerging technology that could help to address this type of problems, because it's, first of all, it's a decentralized solution. That means that all the confidential information that are shared along the supply chain, they are not controlled by a single entity, but they are shared along the supply chain. Now you may ask, okay, we are talking about sensitive information, but now you are telling us that the information is shared among all the actors. And that's where the second piece of technology enter into the game, and that's the encryption. So it's true, the information is distributed, but in the same time, we develop a different layer of encryption, which allows each actor in the supply chain to decide when and to whom certain information could be accessible. I've been talking about chemical composition, but that's only one of the elements that could be shared along the supply chain. There are also a lot of information related, for example, to the safety of the product, but also to the sustainability. For example, the sourcing of the material, knowing that a certain material comes from sustainable sources, or, for example, CO2 emissions during production along the supply chain, in order to define the carbon footprint of a product. Next slide, please. So what I will show now are three pilots that we have been running with the major chemical companies like Dow, Solvay, and Procter & Gamble, in order to give you a tangible idea of what ChemChain is and how that can be applied. So if we move to the next slide, we will start with the first pilot, which we have been working with Dow Chemicals. The scenario here is about the production of mattresses. And in particular, Dow Chemicals produce certain substances that then are mixed together by other actors in the supply chain to produce polyurethane foam. And this polyurethane foam is used in the mattresses. At the end of the life cycle, Dow has developed some technology that can recycle this polyurethane foam. However, in order to recycle the mattress at the end of the life cycle, they need to know exactly which chemicals they were placed inside the foam at the beginning of the supply chain. Currently, the only way for doing that will be to transfer that information throughout the full supply chain. But they don't want to disclose that information because that's confidential. So they are using ChemChain to embed that information into the material, that information is transferred into the product and follow the product during the entire life cycle. The information is encrypted, so it can be decrypted only by an authorization from DAO, which will allow the information to become visible only to the recycler at the end of the supply chain. So in this case, you have a clear information flow that enables the recycling of mattresses without disclosing to the rest of the supply chain sensitive information that are proprietary information of Dow Chemicals. Next slide, please. The second example, this has been run with Solvay, and it is a different scenario. In this case, we have Solvay. It's a chemical company producing in this specific supply chain. They produce polyamide fibers. These fibers are sold to fabric manufacturers, which then are processed by other companies. They cut the fabrics and they produce some garments that then are finally sold in the form of clothes by a brand. In this case, we are talking about a major brand that is based in Brazil, which produce sportive clothes. Also in this case, Solvay has some technology for recycling the polyamide fibers present in the clothes at the end of the life cycle of the article. However, in order to recycle them, they need to have access to certain information that are present along the supply chain. For example, the recycling can occur only if the fibers have not been mixed with other fibers during the fabric manufacturers. They also need to know whether on the final clothes there were some special printing or inks that were used for treating the product, because that could compromise the recycling. So what I do with ChemChain is to embed into the product information and collect from the different actors of the supply chain information about the different manufacturing steps. In this way, they arrive to a final article. In this case, we're talking about a t-shirt that embed some information which enable to distinguish which t-shirt can or cannot be recycled. This is a very interesting case because also the brand is benefiting from that, because they can promote the recyclability of their product. They are planning to establish some engagement programs with the consumer, so providing some rewards, for example, when the client bring back to the store a clothes that they don't need anymore. And most importantly, they also allows to share information about the recyclability of the product. Solvay in this case is also interested in collecting fibers or textile that is produced as a waste during the manufacturing process. So through ChemChain, they are also able to monitor the amount of material which is generated as a waste before the final clothes is produced. And this is a very interesting case, because in this case, the brand is also using this information to rethink about their product and designing new clothes that are more recyclable. So now they care about the fact whether, for example, they are using mixed fibers or not, because that could compromise the recycling. So it's really somehow engaging the whole supply chain in a nice exchange of information program, which is controlled by the actors of the supply chain themselves. Next slide. And this is the final example that I would like to present. This is a pilot that we have been running successfully with Procter & Gamble. This is not about recyclability, but it's more about information on the sourcing of the material. The supply chain here starts with the sustainable palm oil. So Procter & Gamble purchase palm oil from sustainable sources that are certified to be sustainable. Then this palm oil is transferred along the supply chain, which is converted into different substances in 3 different steps before entering into the final product. In this case, we are talking about a dish washing product. The challenge here is to ensure that the amount of sustainable palm oil finally end up into the product, the consumer product, is exactly the palm oil that was sourced from the sustainable source. This seems to be a simple exercise, but it's quite complex because the supply chain, starting from the palm oil until the final article, cross across continents. So it starts in one continent, go in China, then the substance is processed, and then it's sent back. So it's a kind of complex to ensure traceability of this material. So what we are doing here is to provide ChemChain as a tool for tracking the sustainable sourcing of the material, conveying that information throughout the full supply chain until the final consumer. And also there is some work done on the mass balance control to ensure that the amount of palm oil declared in the final product do not exceed the one that you have purchased, because in that case it means that something went wrong in terms of traceability of the raw material. Next slide. And with this, I would like to conclude, just to give an idea on how we work with companies and different supply chains. So the first phase that we do is a kind of discovery session. So we talk with different companies. We try to understand their business cases, how they want to enhance circularity, which type of information they want to exchange along the supply chain. That's the base for setting up a piloting phase, which currently is lasting 6 months, during which we allow company to exchange information using our platform. At the end of the 6 months period, there is a kind of evaluation in cooperation with us and the different business unit involved. And if they find an added value in this type of exercise, they move to a large-scale adoption throughout their full supply chain. So that's a bit in brief what I wanted to present. And thanks a lot for the attention. And I'm here also available to provide answers to questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. And indeed, we will have time for questions later during the panel discussion at the end of this track. Moving on to the third presentation in the circular economy track. So we talk about plastic now, and more specifically about plastic waste, which is, of course, an environmental disaster. But we have one company, for instance, which is called Empower. They have developed a blockchain-based solution which traces every aspect of the journey of plastic. And they provide, for instance, a product passport that offers brands and manufacturers a way to demonstrate the full story, which is behind actually the product that you have, the end product that you have in your hand. You can also buy plastic credits at Empower, and so we're very surprised to see what this will be about. And last but not least, they also have a marketplace for certified plastic. The person who will tell us a bit more about that, who will explain to us what this is about, is Wilhelm Mira. He is the founder and CEO of Empower, and he is live with us online. So Wilhelm, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, as you said, my name is Wilhelm, CEO and also one of the founders of Empower. So Empower is also, as you say, a circular blockchain space, and we're building what we think is kind of the digital infrastructure that you need for a circular economy. So it's really about enabling that shift from a linear economy where producers don't have the responsibility for the products they make, and you create the product as cheaply as possible, you sell it to the market, but you have no responsibility, or you don't need to include kind of the cost of collection, the cost of recycling, and you end up with a system that creates a lot of waste that no one is really accountable for. And you see that in nature, you see it in how much is incinerated, the landfills, and you even start to see it in, the oceans is one thing, but also in, our bodies, and all this service saying that how, we're inhaling a lot of plastics. It's plastic is in the air. It's you get around 4 credit cards of plastic every month into your body. So it's a lot of things that needs to be done, and luckily as well, it's a lot of things happening in this space. So it's I think around 400 different producer responsibility regulations coming into place now, which is happening in countries all around the world. You also start to have these EU regulations like taxes on virgin plastic, which is supposed to, with the goal of making recycled materials competitive to the virgin materials, which has been the problem. And then all these producer responsibility schemes, of course, is really to create an incentive for the producers to create products that are easy to collect again as well. And if the producers have to cover the cost of getting their products back, they will automatically be incentivized to both redesign their products, but also to redesign the value chains. And that's really what we want to facilitate this level. And I think it's what we're doing is similar to what you heard here from before this as well. So it's really about creating a digital tracking system where you can register in any kind of materials. So on our platform, we really create a digital ID for each organization, so digital ID for each facility, and then you create digital inventories. So you can do this from production of a material, from the source of where you're getting plastic, source of where you're getting aluminium or chemicals, and you track that through the whole value chain up until a product. When it becomes a product, you turn that into a digital twin again. If it's one or more materials, you make that into one digital twin. So we also can track it and put a QR code or other ways of tagging it, RFID. And then you can track it also to the use of it. If it's a consumer or a business doing that, then you can set up kind of take-back systems where you can always go in and scan the QR code, get access to a digital twin, see how this kind of product should be treated, where can I deliver it back. And then you keep track of really in a circular loop. So you can do this both on consumer goods, industry goods, chemicals, on kind of material levels. And it's really all this, collect and share data along the value chain here. And we focus, as you mentioned, on plastics from the beginning. How can we incentivize those who are having plastics, how to use it? So it starts really with what we want to do. And you mentioned plastic credits there. So that's kind of one way of, if you have an immutable data where plastic is collected, you can match that with really the producer responsibility of funding that needs to fund it. So if you have a collection point, in Mumbai, in India, you can actually see that, okay, they are registering how much of the different kinds of packaging they are collecting, make that immutable data and match that with kind of Unilever or someone who needs to fund it. And you'll create this producer responsibility scheme. But then once you have that material digitized, you will also follow that through the value chain and make sure it ends up into new products again. And if it's materials that are hard to recycle, of course, you get the data on how much is ending outside, how much ends up in landfills, and it creates an incentive then for the producers to start creating more functional, both materials, but also value chains to make it recyclable again, because they will have that cost of the collection and recycling in the end. And I guess maybe, that's worth mentioning there. Of course, there's more and more studies on plastic waste now coming up, showing also that one thing is that every year you have, plastic of hundreds of billions of dollars ending up in nature or incinerated, but you also have those additional costs that we don't even know yet. And it was a study in Germany in 2019 where 98% of the kids in a study, like 5 to 8 years old, had toxic plastic in blood samples. So it's we don't really know the impact of that yet, but it's definitely a huge cost out there, which really forces society to do something about the plastic waste problem. We go to next. The positive thing, if there's a positive thing around kind of the plastic waste, is that it's so visible and it's really coming high on the agenda. So even if you have the virgin plastic production to the right, it looks bad, but this is really, in this service, 57% of all people thought that plastic waste was the most imminent threat to society. So it's something we need to do something about. And it's also all the big companies in the world are really putting into, like you mentioned here before, like Dow and the plastic producer are all putting in goals of being fully recyclable, fully circular in 2025 and 2030. So it's a lot of things happening in addition to all these producer responsibility schemes that are coming. So go to next there. In theory, I mean, you're starting to get the huge demand for recycled plastics and need for recycled plastic because you want to move from virgin to recyclable to be competitive. The problem still is, though, that the infrastructure is really built around the linear economy. So even if you now have the demand side in place, it's still a lack of collection and recycling infrastructure. So even in Norway, which is supposedly be good on waste management, we can't recycle our own materials. So it's mixed waste is sent and incinerated in Sweden to make heating, and a lot of other waste is also sent to Germany, where they have a capacity to recycle PET bottles. So it's really so to be one of the better countries on this is not even close to have enough infrastructure to take care of all the plastic waste. So that's kind of one problem. And the other problem is that those who are sitting with waste and have more cleaner waste streams that could be recycled, they usually have no connection to the market again, because waste management has really had a lack of transparency. It's very fragmented. And also, if you go to other countries, again, like in India or Nigeria, where we operate, it's really a lot of small players with a few tons, and they have no access to the big companies that now need it. So even if there's a demand for recycled materials now, it's still like 70% is into incineration and landfills, and all that material is getting lost. So, and that's really where kind of we see the solution as well, right? It's to create the circular economy now that you see that the producers start to need to cater to recyclability, are getting the producer responsibility, so they are getting the cost of collection and recycling. They will have to redesign the products, as I mentioned, and also the value chains. And what we really want to facilitate and to enable this circular economy is that you need a digital ecosystem where people easily can exchange data, so you can create the most efficient possible loops, right? So it's not enough to really track a linear value chain from the beginning to the end, but you actually need to redesign the value chains as well. So in many cases that we've been doing in agriculture, seafood, industrial plastics and materials, it's possible to create take-back systems where the producer sells the material, but they track it and they can take it back immediately when it's done, it needs refurbishment or recycling again. And that's the most efficient, and you cut away all the levels of traders and things like that. And you can also, of course, digitize all the waste collection, make sure you can get that back. And there's really, more than $280 billion of plastic every year that you can take back, which is now lost every year into incineration and landfill, but you should be able to bring that back into the industry, and it creates a huge environmental impact, but also financial impact, and really also social impact, because this can create a lot of jobs in the waste collection and segregation at source. Yep. And that's, our solution is, I guess, similar to a couple of other mentioned here as well. And it's really about digitizing the waste streams and make sure you can bring all the materials into circular loops, and keep tracking them and making sure they are optimized both the journey they do, and keep the materials and data that have value for others again. So next one. So this is also an illustration of kind of our platform, and it's really a data aggregation platform where we can take in data from every part of the value chain and share them with those who have get the value out of it. So it's really, and also the revenue model from our side is based on the shared revenue. So it's about formalizing all the parts of the value chain, making sure that also collection, segregation at source is a part of this value chain to make sure enable the circular economy. And then every time someone needs data from someone else, they should be easy to share it, or easy to upload or take down the data you need, with it, still keeping your own data and ownership of that. But then when someone is willing to pay for the data you have, then we have a revenue share on that, and it's really based on the volumes. So yeah, next there. This is also illustration a bit of the journey there. We started in 2018, and we started doing collection pilots where we collected plastic materials around the world, and did that in 15 countries in the first year. And then we saw that, of course, the issue here is that you also need the full traceability. If you want to incentivize the circular economy, you need to know where all the materials end up, and how they end up in nature from the first place. So we've been building this platform, and going now to more than 10,000 tons registered on the platform today. Also driven by these pilots and proof of concepts. We were part of the limestone plastic waste accelerator and plug and play accelerator in 2020, and ended up with this proof of concepts with Dow and BSF, where both of them were looking to find and source more recyclable materials in Nigeria. So if you go to the next slide, what we did was we really got introduced by BSF to the Nigerian Recycle Association and invited them to use the platform. So they would, every day they can register in how much they are collecting of different plastic types. And then we get this kind of live data, which ensures that the bigger plastic producers and those who need to change their feedstock from virgin to recyclable can really crowdsource the waste from and the materials they need from a large amount of collection points. So currently we have hundreds of collection organizations and even more collection points where they can source this plastic they need and set up kind of take-back system collection systems. Yep. And this is kind of illustrating one part of what we're doing there, and is really about creating incentives on the ground as well. So when people deliver plastic waste and do the segregation at source at home, or do the collection on marketplace and deliver to a collection point, they also get rewarded. So they get an incentive to do that part of the job, and in return you get clear waste streams of a much higher quality again, and you really create both jobs and plastic there. So just some pictures of that, the different cleanups organizations in that part, and go on to the next. And this is an illustration then again of how the platform works. I mentioned it before I had the slides as well. It's really about having a digital ID for each organization, for each facility. And then you register in kind of inventory as things are collected. And then every time you send plastic on, if it's from a waste picker to a collection center, collection to the waste aggregator, you have these digital handshakes and two-party confirmation. And then we also make immutable data points of time and place and what happens. So you really get this chain of custody of the movement of the materials, all from the beginning and into new products again, where you then can create a product passport with the QR code. So you can go to the next there. So. And then just the illustration there. So we really tag the blockchain. Every time you change hands, you make this immutable data point that really reduces the cost of assurance and audits of this the tracking of the materials. Go to next there. So what we're doing here is as well to create this product passport, of course, and gather this data and make sure that there's a digital record for the collected plastic so it can be tracked through it. And again, this gives the materials not only the material value, which you can increase that by doing the segregation at source, but you also add the the data to it on the stories and metadata, which adds value as well. So go to next. Just wanted some at the end of this, I think. So it's just a few kind of about the traction. So we currently have a few hundred organizations using the platform, and they have a capacity of 160,000 tons per year, and we should be at 1 million ton per year. That's being a capacity of collection of the organization on the platform by next year. So we could go to next. And we're also kind of growing the volumes on the platform now. So year on year, we had 500% increase from 2018 to 2019, 1,000 from 2019 to 2020, and more than 3,000% growth in the volumes on the platform from 2021 to 2021. So it's really becoming more and more mature, and we're still working on a lot of ERP integrations and things like that to make sure we can scale it even faster in the future. So next. This is just illustration where we are. They've been doing a lot of work in Africa, Southeast Asia, Europe, of course, driven by the regulations and producer responsibility schemes. We did earlier this fall the first, as far as we know, producer responsibility reporting system in Norway, where we tracked plastic through the value chain and reporting to the PROs in Norway through our blockchain system. So make sure they get the immutable data on the movement of the plastics where the producers need to pay for it. So that's was a live project, and a lot of learnings on how we can use this technology in Norway to for introducing producer responsibility and really making that lower the cost of sharing the necessary data that are coming through the EU regulations now. So I think that's exciting that we see this need for it all over the world. We also have in USA and also in Latin America now. So for 2022, it will be kind of a global platform, and we really see some benefits of having that cross-country learnings as well, and making more standards around this tracking. So next. Yes, I think that's probably okay. I won't say too much about this, but of course we've been getting a lot of attention on this and really been part of a lot of interesting networks. So testing this out again, really on more a global scale, and seeing the need for this kind of cross-border technologies that blockchain is, that really brings a layer of trust and transparency across cultures, across regions, and that's really a key if you want to optimize and create really functional, sustainable, and circular economies. So that was it. I think this is the end of the presentation. So thanks a lot, and apologize for all this technical misses here.
So we continue exploring your solution now during the roundtable, which will be moderated by Fabio Fabi. He is in Bologna. He's a digital pioneer, and he's actually working with the local host in Bologna, the local location, which is Big Board Boost Innovation Garage Bologna. We will have Wilhelm on the panel. We will also have Lorenzo Zulu, whom we heard earlier before, and we will have in addition a new participant, which we have not yet heard, who is Jérôme Petri, who is leading the Luxembourgish initiative of the product circularity data sheet, and he's also the editor of the related ISO norm. Unfortunately, Antoine Le Feuvre from SUEZ cannot join the panel. He had to catch his train back to Paris, so he will not be with us on the panel. So Fabio, I hand over to you in Bologna for the panel.
Hello everybody. Thank you for letting me, let's say, moderate this panel. I'm really happy. We are here from Bologna, as you said, right now. We are at the big is the Boost Innovation Garage. You already told this. And this is the hub for innovators here in Bologna, Italy. So I can say welcome to everybody here and welcome also to all the panelists. I'm sorry that Antoine had to leave, but we will start immediately with the other three panelists. So welcome to our panel. The panel, as you know, is blockchain, the missing link in the circular economy. So basically, the circular economy principles seek to add value to materials and products, maximizing their life cycle length and regenerate them at their end of life. And today we've seen that digital technologies leverage this transition through data collection, analysis, and integration. So the idea that we are going to explore with this panel today is how blockchain can support a circular economy in transforming our lives, businesses, and obviously the global economy for the upcoming years. So I have a first question to all. Please give us your opinion very quick, in a couple of minutes, very short, because we are running out of time. So we can add more questions and answers in our debate. So the question is, we all think that information transparency, reliability, and automation provided by blockchain can effectively leverage the circular economy initiatives. So issues, and this is the question, are mainly on technology or on governance? Please, Lorenzo, can you start with this round of answers?
Yes, so I think both are two very important elements. The technology is certainly not the solution, but it's an enabler for allowing circularity. We have seen in different examples also in the other presentation now that is important. The way in which we use the blockchain is to really pass through information. And why is that important? Because the value of the material to be recycled, it gets a values when you know that it's valuable and you know how to use it. But the problem is that who has in a specific moment that material, that product, that waste in their hands is not necessarily the one that can exploit that value. So we need the technology to enable to connect the people in the value chain in order to allow the one that knows the value and know how to recycle it to get access to that material. That's a key important. Governance is also another essential element, especially when you deal with sharing of information. In our specific case, we decided to develop the solution based on a private blockchain, which nodes are hosted by the actors in the supply chain itself. So the actors in the supply chain are the ones that have also some leverage in deciding the governance, how to use the product, and which will be the future developments. So I think the two elements goes hand in hand.
Willem?
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree that it goes hand in hand. And as you say, it's really, I think the whole development now is really pushed by regulation and governance. And it's, of course, but technology is a solution and an enabler, and is making it more efficient. I think I'm not sure you need blockchain to do this, but it definitely increases the efficiency and it reduces the cost of assurance and audits. And, you know, you create that level of trust and transparency. And I think, like, coming from Norway as well, one of those, you talk about a Nordic model, because the cost of making deals in Norway is much lower than if you go to USA. The cost per lawyer per agreement is significantly lower because of the high level of trust. And I think really with blockchain we can create that more a global level of trust and transparency. We'll know that this is done, this is agreed upon, this is kind of the what's been agreed, the data are true, they are not really changed. And yeah, so it's really kind of a solution that helps you implement whatever governance and regulations you want to do, and you can make it cost efficiently. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. And Jérôme, please, your opinion.
Sorry, I missed a little bit the start of the question, so if you can just repeat the question.
Oh, sure. The question was issues. Hold on. Sorry. So in the blockchain and let's say in the way it leverages circular economy initiatives, the issues are mainly on technology or on governance?
Speaking for the ministry, I would say governance is very important, because I think you need to have a trusted partner, a trusted third party who can verify and then make sure all this information is true somehow. So I think the technology today is getting well, is ready and accessible, but still today there's a lot of discussion of yeah, more on the governance side, who is also responsible for the data, who is taking care of it, who is making sure it is correct. So all these questions are still a little bit more tricky today, I would say.
Yeah, in fact, one of the questions I had, and it has been just shown by Lorenzo, but in the recycling industry, manufacturers and consumers want to get information about the chemical products they deal with, and this is your, let's say, idea about the chemical products. So how can you ensure transparency in a circular product without compromising confidentiality for each of the parts involved in the blockchain or in the circular economy, obviously?
Yes, thank you for that question. I think this addresses specifically one of the projects driven by the Ministry of the Economy, which is the product circularity data sheet. And this is something I would say quite close to what ChemChain is doing, with additional or different ideas together. So we saw that there's a big reluctance to provide the disclosure of confidential information. And in order to get that information, we are working with a data template, which is asking this kind of circular properties on products, but you're not replying with the full data or full information, but just providing a true-false statement. And when you reply with a true statement on that, it means that you have to keep proof why you comply to that specific property. And with that, you create a decentralized system, and people are still keeping the secret information or their own IP at their premise, and only on a need-to-know base, they are divulging the information to people who they really trust in and are sure they will make good use of the information.
Thank you. I have a question for Lorenzo. Lorenzo, do you think that the success of blockchain can be sped up by the fact that corporate social responsibility expectations are forcing chemical companies, but in general, the companies, to be more strict with the management and sharing on information and to invest in more sustainable production practices?
I'm based on our experience, we see there are two main drivers for pushing companies in that direction. The first one is certainly the regulatory environment. We are seeing in Europe, but also in individual countries or in other continents, more and more regulations requesting product to comply with specific restrictions are being developed. So that somehow is forcing the supply chain, each actor in the supply chain, to ask more and more information to their suppliers. That's one element. The second element is indeed more proactive and green companies that try to do it voluntarily, but not just for the purpose of complying with the regulation, but to get the maximum out of that. Like in the example we have shown, the interest there is not really to comply with the regulation. That's another story. The interest there is in order to maximize the materials and the products that are in the economy, and that is becoming a challenge. In some situations, there is even competition is trying to have access to this material. So it's definitely getting more and more value to move towards a circular economic model. So I see these two drivers as elements. In parallel, maybe to reconnect also with your previous question regarding the confidentiality information, I think there are two levels of confidentiality. One is indeed the specific information related to the products, but the other important element is also the structure of the supply chain itself, because company may not want to reveal to their clients which are their suppliers. So the nature of the supply chain is in itself something that is confidential. And these are, I think, the two fronts that we've been working on in our piloting. So it's a complex, let's say, environment, and somehow the use of technology help to overcome these barriers.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Wilhelm now. I read that in Norway you recycle over 95% of plastic bottles thanks to a deposit system in the state, let's say, in your country. And you created a system which allows people to exchange plastic waste for tokens. So people are involved, as you said in your presentation before, in reducing plastic waste and building a recycling system. But which is the market potential for your project worldwide, where this, let's say, recycling percentage is not so high like as it is in Norway?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely a huge market, and even in Norway, as you say, it's for the PET bottles, which is kind of 1% maybe of all the plastic. So it's still a very tiny percentage of the overall that's really recycled. The incentive system there, but giving plastic waste really a value. If you take it out of the rest of the waste, deliver it easily back in the supermarkets, that works. So in most countries where they implement this kind of deposit system, they end up with more than 90% recycling. So, you know, that's what we have been trying out in the last few years, is to do this for more and more things. And, you know, potentially it's all kinds of plastic, of course, and we see this being implemented now in as different plastics are becoming shortages in North America and Europe. You know, more and more companies also need to go other places around the world, like Southeast Asia, Africa, to source more of the materials. But we also need to create more incentives to do segregation at source in Europe. I mean, we still have so much materials that are sent to waste and being incinerated, that if you create an incentive system also for the ones holding that plastic to actually, you know, do the segregation and collection before it's end up in waste, there's again like billions of dollars to really keep in the economy. And so it's really tied to everything. And in addition to this, you have also other materials, of course, and you will need people to start delivering back, you know, batteries, old mobile phones. It's a lot of these things where you really can create incentive system to make sure you get minerals back and create more circular loops and really less waste than we have in society today.
Okay, thank you. Jérôme, you are a circular economy expert, and you work at the product circularity data sheet. Can you tell us more about it and about the key benefits and achievements of this project, please?
Yes, thank you. So I think the key points I already mentioned up front is really getting the circular properties of the product flowing in the supply chain. And in contrary to existing system where the end producer is going back his supply chain to fetch all the information, we really want to set up a bottom-up system where people provide this kind of information directly from the beginning and pass it along through the supply chain. And as I highlighted before, this will be made by using a statement approach and based also on a decentralized system to make sure people keep power on their own trade secrets. And what we have done already now is that we have engaged more than 50 international companies throughout more than 12 countries. And they're helping us piloting now the PCDS system in their company together with their supplier and also their customer. We have specific pilots in textile, in construction, and in the metals industry. And we are trying to extend this to electronics and also automotive. And also in parallel, we have started an international standard on the PCDS on the ISO. So I am also the official editor of the future ISO 59040, which will define how to set up this kind of product security data sheet system. And this international standard should be published by end of 2024. So any circular, yep.
Yeah, that's very interesting. The ISO, let's say, means a standard. But how can we measure the current state of play between the public and private sectors in working towards a circular economy using blockchain? Because this maybe is the key problem, right? Jérôme.
Yes, I understand your question. I'm not sure we have now the capability to measure it and see the real impact it has already today. I see that there's more and more blockchain initiative coming up. There are maybe also other technologies coming up. But in the end, I think what is necessary is the digitalization of the solution. And that is, I think, with all the new technologies coming up, will be the most important in the future. It will enable also new business models. That's also what we want to achieve with the PCDS, is to get away also a bit from the linear economy and with all the data available to enable new circular business models.
Thank you, Jérôme. Thank you, Jérôme. Now I have a question for all. And the question is, how we've seen today many projects. So some are working on the chemical products. We've seen a project working on the agricultural segment and other categories. Obviously, all the projects are very interesting and they work very well. But how can we deal with scalability and interoperability between the existing systems, in your opinion? Please, Willem, you can start.
Thanks. I'll do that. It's definitely interesting. I mean, it's a lot of things also happening in the whole ecosystem, right? Just in the last 3 years, I think, since we started and kind of shows our blockchain infrastructure and how we do it, and we're working on the public blockchain as well because it's cost efficient, and I think also it's you always has a trade-off if you choose a private one with trust and costs and things like that. So it's kind of what we do. But now the whole ecosystem around this is changing a lot, right? So you're really solving a lot of the early stage issues, and it's becoming more and more integrated to ecosystem around you with payments and IDs and digital IDs, KYC. So a lot of that is coming in place. So that's really good and maturing the blockchain part. And I think, as you say, today you see a lot of projects where this is actually being used in real use cases. And, we have a lot of live customers using blockchain for tracking now. The other part is, what we're really working on is a lot of integrations with existing ERP system to make sure this works with SAP easily, that you should be able to onboard and really exchange data with whatever is blockchain secured without having to do any manual work, without having to have an extra hassle with it. So I think it's more like a time issue that this is happening because the technology really has some huge benefits in cost efficiency and, level of trust that you will that is quite costly if you want to do it without the technology. So it's more about the maturation of the ecosystem, integrating with different systems, if it's payments or if it's ERP systems, and that's really happening now. So I think you'll just see this explode and being used in any material, any products, and And that's also where the European Union product passport directive is coming, that they are looking at decentralized systems to provide traceability and really due diligence of every supply chain for any product in the EU within the next 4 or 5 years. So really great developments there as well.
Thank you, Willem. Lorenzo?
Yeah, I think you touched two very important points. On scalability, that can definitely be an issue. I mean, blockchain is not a light technology; it's a kind of sophisticated technology. So depending on how you design the product, you may have some scalability issue. We have faced that actually, because in our first prototype, we were looking at some level of sophistication that were not scalable. So we had to redesign that and think that in a different way. So it required a lot of thinking to ensure that your product can be scalable. Interoperability, that's another important element. Certainly what has been just mentioned regarding integration with other company system, that's not an issue that should be done. It's very important, but the main problem is interoperability between different blockchain systems. In the beginning, there was a lot of debate about that, and the fact that it's not possible to make two blockchain system communicate between each other. But now the situation is evolving, because it depends on how you want the system to communicate between each other. And I've seen a lot of work going in that direction, and I think that would be the future, because we cannot pretend that there will be a completely different disconnected system in the place. For example, blockchain certificate related to the project for recollecting plastic around the world, that may need to be linked to other blockchain systems that contain information on specific products. That's feasible. It really depends on how you want them to interact. So I think the interoperability, it depends on which level of interoperability you may want, but that's a direction where indeed a lot of research is going on, and I think that should be the future.
Jerome, and
yes,
what's your opinion from the, let's say, top of the European Union desks?
But I think you raised really two key questions, and scalability. I see another point is that if we want to do scalability, we need to be inclusive also for SMEs. So this is important that the system remain, I would say, cost-effective. That was mentioned by Wilhelm. And then what Lorenzo said also, technically, it must be also accessible to this kind of companies. So implementation in ERPs is one way, or maybe facilitating software to help these people who are probably not so IT knowledgeable to implement that kind of solution will be very important. And then to make the bridge to interoperability, all this must be from the beginning coming together with a communication system which is either machine readable or can communicate machine to machine. So this will be very important both for scalability and interoperability, to make sure all the system can communicate with a large amount of data without having to have manual inputs. And then also, finally, for the interoperability, I think it is important that we use as much as possible open standard, and if possible also open data. I think that would be favored in order to have a growing community and make sure we have a large acceptance of solution which can be champion or leading the market and be accessible for everyone.
Thank you to everyone for their participation to this panel that come to the end. We shrink the time to be in line with the agenda time. So I'm really happy, because I think that we added some new content to the discussion, some topics that are important, in my opinion, to the development of blockchain in the circular economy. In fact, we have seen that there are many opportunities from the use of blockchain in the circular economy, and I think that its use can lead us to realize many of the goals of the Sustainable Development Agenda faster than we thought or we think. The road to the 2030 agenda has been drawn, and the blockchain is certainly already on the move. And you are among the protagonists of this road, of this move, and I'm really happy to have moderated this panel. And from Bologna, I can say ciao, and see you next. And I hope you good luck, and keep going.
Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Indeed, thank you also to the panelists. It's time for a coffee break. I think you all have noticed that we are running a bit late, so we'll make the break a bit shorter, 15 minutes, so that we can catch up a bit of the lost time. So see you again in 15 minutes. Thank you.